What do we understand by fuel subsidy? Fuel subsidy is when the government of the country fixes the price of fuel for consumers to purchase at a cheaper price below the global price, and the government pays for the difference in price. This is what Nigerian government have been doing since the 1970s. Since around 1971, Nigerian government have been subsidizing our fuel. And this is because we do not have functioning refineries in Nigeria. Because if our refineries are working, we will not have any reason to be importing fuel from other countries into Nigeria. So, when OPEC fixes a global price of fuel, let's say $70 per barrel. Remember, I said one barrel is about 159 liters approximately. So they will calculate other costs. Our government purchases this oil in dollars, and they calculate other costs of bringing it in, the shipments, the cost of insurance, the cost of clearing, everything. By the time it lands into our country, there is something they call the landing costs. The present landing cost is approximately about 400 naira per liter. So, if the landing cost is 400 naira per liter, how much do you think it will cost by the time they transport this fuel to all filling stations? By the time private depots purchases this oil from NNPC, oil marketers purchase it from oil depot, and also transporting it to different filling stations. Maybe by then we'll be buying it at 700 naira or 600 naira or more. So this is why the government looks at it that, okay, if people ought to be purchasing fuel at a very high cost, it will lead to serious inflation in the country. And due to this, there will be, and imagine this is a country where people are not even getting enough minimum wage to take care of their needs. Adding to that, if the fuel cost now increases, it will cause disaster in the country. This is why the government decides to always put down billions upon billions of money every day, because according to calculation, if they will calculate the amount to spend on subsidy per day, it will be going to about 18 to 19 billion naira per day, which amounts to about 500 and something billion monthly, and that is about 3 to 4 trillion in a year. So imagine a situation whereby the government doesn't subsidize our fuel, which means people will be purchasing fuel at a very high cost, and this will lead to inflation, and life will become difficult for people of the country. This is why the government have decided to always subsidize our fuel. But since this subsidy issue has been going on in Nigeria, we've been hearing a lot of scam. People have been saying this subsidy in Nigeria is a scam. How is it a scam? Now let us get it clear. Let me digress and use the educational sector as an example. Let's say the government have decided that they want to subsidize schools in Nigeria, maybe primary school or secondary schools. Now what they will do is that they will look at the Department of Education. They will tell them that, okay, you'll be the one in charge of monitoring schools that are entitled to this subsidy, educational subsidy. So this Department of Education will send agents to schools to check how many students they have. Now, a school that is having about 1,000 students will bring out its register, because that is the best way to reflect the number of students. The agent will not go into classes to be counting the number of students. Yes, he will go into classes to see visually to inspect, but that doesn't reflect the total number of students in the school, because some student might be sick and absent from school. So they use the register to know the number of registered students in the school. So if the school has about 200 students, they look at it that, okay, this school is charging students 20,000 naira per term, and now the government sees that it has only 200 students. So what the government will do is that, okay, you say, we'll give you a fixed amount which you'll be charging the student. You'll be collecting only 10,000 naira from the student per term. Then the government will pay 50% of the remaining money, which means that half of that school fees, which is 10,000 per student, the government will be paying it. And the government will be paying it maybe at the end of the year or the beginning of the year to the schools. So this is what subsidy looks like in the area of petroleum sector also. So the government pays some part of this payment, because if the landing cost is 400 naira, then the government will decide that, okay, we'll be subsidizing this for paying this amount, maybe this percentage of the cost for each Nigerians to to spend on this fuel cost, and the government will now be the one to fix the price, to say all filling stations should be selling fuel at this fixed price in Nigeria because the government have already subsidized the fuel. The corruption that happens in the area of subsidy is this. Let's go back to the school example we were using before. Take for instance at a school that has 200 students in the register. Do you know they could forge and inflate the number of students in their register? They could come up with false name and false picture of students just to put in their register. Instead of them putting 200 students, they could put actually 500 students. They had more numbers to their students because there is actually no way the government could track it with technology. So this is exactly what is happening also with oil importers that are importing for NNPC. They normally lie and inflate the number of fuel they bring into the country regularly so that they could get more money from government in form of subsidy. Now the painful aspect again is this. When this oil, remember I told you in the part 1 of this video that oil marketers, they do what? They sell this oil to neighboring countries. Now let's look at the example using the educational sector which we were using before. Imagine a particular school that is getting subsidy from government will now decide to say, okay, let me go and bring students from neighboring countries where their own education is not subsidized. So they are paying per term based on the fixed price of 20,000 naira. So you bring them into your school. Instead of you charging them that 20,000, you charge them 15,000, collecting the money from them. And yet, when our own government agency comes into your school, you include the number of those students, which are outside students. You change them into Nigerian and you say they are part of the school. So when you have 200 actual students of your school and you have extra 300 students from neighboring countries, making it 500. So the government will now be paying subsidy on those outside students, which you are also charging higher amount from. This is exactly what is happening in the oil sector. So oil marketers, they take our oil, which the government have subsidized for our own consumption. They take it out to sell to neighboring countries like Benin, Togo, where they purchase oil at higher price and sell to them at a higher cost and make more money, and leaving us shortage in Nigeria. So we'll be having shortage of oil, which could lead to scarcity of oil. And yet we are paying tax. Government is using this huge amount of money that we are supposed to be using to take care of other areas of our life in the country, to subsidize this fuel for other people to use. So these are some of the things that have been going on in the oil sector, and this is why the government says, look, this subsidy of a thing has always been a scam. It's like the big men, the elite who are in this oil sector are the ones who are just sucking the country of its revenue. Because even IMF has recommended to Nigeria to stop subsidizing oil, because Nigerian government keep borrowing from IMF every time. They keep borrowing money, and this money is not having effect in the life of the ordinary Nigerian citizen. Poverty keeps on increasing. There are no jobs. The government is not building infrastructures. Our health sector is dilapidated. The hospitals are not having better equipment. No power. Electricity is not stable in the country. So this is why the government is looking at it that maybe we should just be using this money we are using for subsidy to take care of other areas of the economy. Although when they borrow money, adding it to our revenue, they pay for subsidy, which is taking a very huge part of our budget. They pay for this subsidy in trillions every year. The other parts, they spend it on repaying debt that they borrow. And some other part, they spend huge amount also on taking care of themselves. When I mean themselves, I mean the legislators, the senators, all the allowances, millions they collect every month. Likewise, the presidency, the all the executives, all the money they spend in allowances, newspaper allowance, all this wardrobe allowance, clothing, they are just too much. And what will now come down to we the ordinary citizen will just be little money, which some people will still steal and keep in their pocket. So this is why the government has always been saying they want to stop subsidizing fuel so that Nigeria will have enough money to spend on other areas of the economy. Now let's now look at the effect. If they don't stop subsidizing fuel, what will happen? The effect of not stopping this subsidy is what we are still seeing today. If they don't stop this subsidy, what we are experiencing today will keep on happening. There will still be issue of corruption in NNPC with the oil importers, and so many other forms of corruption that has been happening that we are experiencing now will still keep on happening, and we'll still be having issue of fuel scarcity also. But the thing is that some areas will still be purchasing oil at a smaller rate, like about 180 naira per liter, 200 naira per liter. Will be purchasing fuel at that price. That is the advantage. But if they remove subsidy, what will happen? If they remove subsidy, the effect is that oil price will increase, because now we'll be buying oil at a very high price. When they bring it on a landing rate of 400 naira, they transport it to various filling stations. We could be buying at 500, 600 or 700 or even 800 in some places. So, and this will lead to high cost of living because everything revolves around this fuel. The transport they will use to transport these goods that will buy around in markets, it will use fuel. The vehicle will use fuel, and the fuel, when they are buying it at a higher price, it will also lead to increasing the price of the goods they are selling, which means everything in markets will skyrocket. The price, something you've been buying for 1,000 naira before, will go to 3,000 naira. And this is a country where the government is still debating on increment of minimum wage. Where people, how much is our minimum wage even that they are debating on? 30,000 naira. This is not enough for common man to survive, even at the present moment. Now imagine if there is now subsidy removal and prices of goods increase, then that means people will die. There will be serious problem in the country. Another thing is that people will even carry on services that use their generator because our power supply is not stable. People depend on generators to power their businesses. These people also will increase the price of their services. So the major solution is that our government should look into increasing minimum wage first before they could even talk about increment of removal of subsidy. They should look into the increment of minimum wage so that life will not be difficult for Nigerians by the time they remove this subsidy from fuel. And another thing is they should look into investing into our power sector to make sure our electricity is stable, because we understand that the whole thing going on with this electricity sector is all games they've been playing for years with Nigerians. So they should make sure our electricity is stable and make sure there are other alternatives of transportation out there for people to use. If you go to developed countries, some other nations, this removal of subsidy will not even be a big issue to them because there are other alternatives. People could decide to go on trains. They could decide to use the public buses because it will be more convenient for them. The roads are good. There will be no traffic. There are traffic lights. Everything is working smoothly. People will not have any cause to complain. If electricity is stable, people running their businesses will not complain about increase in fuel price. And another thing is our refineries. The government should make sure they help us build our refineries and make them to work. Thank God the Dangote refinery is coming up. Yes, the Dangote refinery will help us, but it's not enough. Dangote is a businessman. If Dangote starts his refinery today, he can decide to say, okay, he wants to be selling fuel at the global price. Obviously, he'll be selling it at the global price to the Nigerian government, to NNPC. And he might say, okay, I'm also charging Nigerian government in dollars. So it won't even be different from what they buy outside. So it will just be maybe a little change, although the cost will not be too high because of transport costs to transport it around. But it will not serve much differences than we having our own government refineries in Nigeria. The 4 refineries we have around our country, they should please help us make it work. We heard that these 4 refineries, if put together, could produce about 440,000 barrels of fuel per day. If you multiply that by 159 liters, come on, we are almost there. And if they add it to the Dangote refinery that could produce 650 100,000 barrels of oil per day. That means we'll be having over 150 million liters of oil produced daily. And according to record, they say Nigeria only needs 60 million liters of oil per day. So which means we'll even be exporting fuel to other countries and we'll be getting more money in the country. And this will help us to bring our fuel price down. So what the present government has promised to do is that they said by June this year, 2023, they are going to remove subsidy. And when they remove subsidy, the alternative plan they've prepared is that they will give a particular type of transport card to Nigerians where they can load 5,000 naira to the poor Nigerians, not all Nigerians, to the poor Nigerians. They will give them 5,000 naira to support them with transportation to wherever they want to go to. What do you think about this idea? Do you think it's a nice one? We've had similar cases before where they say they will be giving poor Nigerians 5,000 naira, but when they do this thing, we all know what happens. When they do it for like the first 6 months, then it stops and we don't hear anything about it again. So maybe this is the same thing that will happen if this present APC government comes into power. We've had from the three major contenders in this coming general election, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Atiku Abubakar of PDP, and Labour Party Peter Obi. The three of them have promised that they will remove fuel subsidy in Nigeria. But the question now we should be asking is this: who do we trust among these three people that when removing the fuel subsidy is not the issue, but the issue is that who do we trust among these three people that when they remove this fuel subsidy, the money, the trillions they are making from the removal of this fuel subsidy, who do we believe that we actually use this money for what they are supposed to use it for, to better the life of Nigerians? This is the actual question we should be asking. Do you think Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the APC will use this money the right way to take care of Nigerians, to fix our electricity, to build infrastructure, to make life better for Nigerians, and to increase minimum wage? I don't know. The decision is yours to make. Or do you think Atiku Abubakar, who have been part of this government for a long time, will actually do that? Use these trillions that they will make after removing subsidy to better the life of Nigerians? Well, the decision is yours to make. Or perhaps maybe they will just keep on stealing this money the way they've been doing before, removing the subsidy and keep enriching themselves and their generations. Or do you believe Peter Obi of Labour Party will use this money the right way? Although we've had track record of him, what he did in the state when he was a governor, we heard how prudent he was with money. This is a man who doesn't joke with money, who doesn't like to spend money recklessly, and he wants to invest money into the right things that will benefit the people. So, with this little analysis, I believe we should know who your vote should be going to in this coming election, so that we don't take a reckless decision that will destroy our country totally. If the three of them say they will remove subsidy, fine, but who do we trust with this money they will take from removal of subsidy to do the right things for we Nigerians, so that we don't have effects of this subsidy removal after it has been removed? So this is a question to you. This is something we should ponder on. Thank you very much for joining me. Till I see you next time. Bye-bye.